The gulf was named for John Savage, but it well lives up to his name. It's we're descending at Still Point, and how many are going on that? Could I see a show of hands? Okay, great. We took a party about this size on the about the middle of, I guess, I can't remember. It's about a month ago. Bill Howell over here in their cottage, and his wife, and we had a Swiss professor who's one of the Swiss descendants, Klopper Allman, from the University of Maryland, who's really was the one that spearheaded the request to go, and he was going back. He's the world authority on Russian economy, and they gave me I stayed with him the night before. He told me some stories of Gorbachev and some of his experiences over in Russia that were wonderful. Howell Adams, who's 74, went with us. Howell is the hero of Beersheba now because he's been restoring the Hunterwald farm, and when the renovation here was going to destroy and demolish the Hopper cottage, he moved it over and restored it just across the road over here. So he and his wife live at Lover's Leap Cottage, which is one of the premier views out here. It's just out on Grass Ridge Road, the first house on the left. And he had been in the Gulf before, but he wanted to go back. He has a little disintegration of his tendon, so he walked with a bit of a shuffle, but I was happy to, and his daughter went with him, and Bill accompanied him carefully, and we watched him. He had a stick, and he made it down and back without a fall. However, Dr. Allman was not so lucky. He fell, I heard a terrible blow, fell on the rock, his shoulder badly, and broke his stick, it sounded like. And afterwards he said a 4-foot copperhead crawled out from under the rock and gave him a look and went away. So we can be grateful for big favors. The copperheads live in these loose colluvial rock collages that they're sort of slowly slipping down to the bottom of the gulf. They're very friendly people. They've never met bad people. So if you meet up with any of our friendly snakes, just don't pat them on the head, just give them their space and smile back at them, and they won't learn bad manners. As long as you keep your hands and feet off of them, they usually don't bother you. I sat down beside one day and had lunch out on this point because I didn't want any of the kids with me to mess with it. And 11 of our Sierra Clubbers hiked past the rattlesnake before the 12th one said, "Hello, ain't that a rattlesnake?" And it was a big one, and his tail was coiled under him, so he didn't rattle. Or she didn't rattle. But anyway, Savage Gulf is an absolute wonderful place. And the trees are big. That's why they're big, because it's so difficult of access. Mr. Werner Sr., the Werners came here with the Swiss settlement. This area was, after the Civil War, President Andrew Johnson was in the White House, and a consul named Plumacher said, where can we bring some Swiss citizens? They were having some civil unrest in that country, and they needed some place to immigrate. So Johnson said, why don't you try Grundy County? It's be the closest to Switzerland you're going to find around here. Good land, cheap. So Peter Staub brought a colony over and bought about 1,600 acres of land over here in what was called a field, Grutli. And Grutli is still the little name and the center for the Swiss people who've descended here. So that colony prospered. They made wine and cheese and grew land richer than it was when they started. And finally, the Swiss are smart. They began to look around and see what else they could do. So Mr. Fachnacht went to Chattanooga and made trucks and truck beds and made a fortune. He used to own the Turner Cottage over here. Vala Hach and her husband were at Clarksville. They went into catering business. He traveled with American Airlines and that sort of thing. And so Grady York was one of his father was a Wendley from Manchester, and he became a banker. Anyway, the Swiss people have left a good impact here because the Werner family believed in selection cutting, not clear cutting. And that was the style that had kept European forests going for many years. And so that mode kept the attitude that they would cut the savage timber when it was ripe and ready. Well, it was several hundred years old when a right-of-way from the mill with the narrow gauge, not wasn't narrow gauge, just regular gauge railway track was laid out, and the landowner said you can have right-of-way through here. And after a year, Mr. Werner got busy with other things. He didn't get to cut the trees. So when he came back, the man said, well, you had your chance. You can't have a right-of-way again. And that was that. So Werner had other business. They had coal and lumber as well. They had a big operation at Tracy City. So that's how that stand of virgin timber came to be. And then his son or grandson, I believe it would be Sam Werner, got interested in Jeeps and military vehicles, and his son Bud, and they got busy and had a big time collecting stuff like that. If you go through Tracy City, you'll see woods rusting parts of military vehicles. If you want any part of anything, you can get it. But Werner was an interesting character. It was a hobby for him. He had something like $17 million worth of land, but he was just not interested in that. He was interested in his Jeeps. One guy stopped one day. I was sitting there under a shade tree talking to him and said, I hear you got Jeeps for sale. Mr. Werner said, yeah, there's one in that wooden crate over there if you want it. And he said, you mean to tell me there's a Jeep in that box? And Mr. Werner said, if you doubt my word, you get off my land and you go now. And off he went. No sale. So that's the kind of personality it took to hold on to $1 million worth of veneer and then some. And I first heard of Savage Gulf when I went to a conference in Wisconsin in '64. I just hired on, and the Latvian accent professor said, what are you doing to save Savage Gulf and May Prairie? And I had not heard of either one, so I got busy, got back down here and went to Mr. Werner, and he said, I'd like to see those big trees reseed the whole plateau. And so I got his drift, but he says, you better hurry, the taxes is eating me up. So he gave us the time. And then we, by great luck, we elected a younger governor, I believe 42 at that time, from Memphis, who I happened to have made a talk at his church in Memphis. Quite good luck, and he knew me, and I knew him. And I said, Governor, don't you want to stretch your legs? I could see that he was the first Republican in 50 years, and the Democrats were giving him what fur down there. And he said, yeah, I believe we would. So he came up by helicopter. We took horses from right here up down the Grassy Ridge Fire Tower Road, up the Stage Road, and then hiked out through Still Point, where we're going to go down today, and then out to the Werner line, where Jeeps took us then up on the other side and made a grand round, and the governor said, it's so pretty, let's buy it. So the legislature had passed a Tennessee Natural Areas Act in '71, and by '72 we were in negotiation with the Werners, and by '73 we had our second natural area, Savage Gulf. The first was Radnor Lake. So that's how this began. And of course this assembly here, I'm sure you know the history, that John Armfield was the largest slave trader in the world in New Orleans, and he concluded before the Civil War that was a rotten business, and he gave it up, moved up here, and I believe the man Dahlgren for that avenue over there in Natchez Trace had the largest number of slaves in his operation at Natchez, Mississippi. So this thing was started as a place to get away from it all. They got away from the yellow fever of New Orleans and Memphis and moved up to the mountains where the air was cleaner. And teach me the faith of the mountains, serene and sublime, the deep-rooted joy of living one day at a time, leaving the petty possessions the valley folk buy for the glory of glad windswept spaces where earth meets the sky. That's what we got here. And so this assembly had a jazz band, they had Creole cooks, and they had up to 400 people a night, and they had a lot of good times here. After the Civil War, things were pretty rocky, and some of the boys, if you want to read stories about it, Mary Knowles Murphy, who at that time women weren't thought to be smart enough by the men to write books, so she had to call herself Charlie Egbert Craddock in order to get published. But she is the family for whom Murfreesboro is named, and she documented all these wonderful mountain stories up here in her series of books on the Cumberland. So watch for those; they should be around. And so this whole area has been, over the years, kind of off to the side, remote. Unfortunately now roads are being improved. there's no planning and zoning in rural Tennessee counties, so subdivisions are hopscotching closer and closer. Everybody nowadays wants to be next to a waterfall or a scenic view. Cliff Tops at Mount Eagle was one of the first. Fairfield Glade was another. So the Yankees are coming, and especially those that don't speak Spanish. And we are beginning to see a tremendous increase in migration into Tennessee. So what's happened now is that the ragged borderlines that we thought we were able to defend back in the 60s when we started buying land here for $50 an acre, now went for 500. Now it's going anywhere from, could be 150,000 an acre if you could find it, depending on where you are. So we're in a real struggle now, and we formed a Friends of South Cumberland coalition, and they are raising private money. We just had a meeting right before last. I'll tell you more about it tonight. But we need all the friends we can get, and that's why we're glad to see you all here. You are the true believers who love the plants and vegetables, and I think it's great that we're going to get out and look at it. And I'm going to shut up and take a pit stop, and I wonder if there's any questions or comments. We're going to go out and drive out, and maybe the ranger may join us. Come light on your shoulder, the butterfly of happiness. And it's so nice we have a butterfly spurt with us. I call them flutterbys because they do flutter by. How close will that thing go?
That'll do it. I'm pretty close right
All
there.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm sure you have.
Yeah.
And he knows that I'm a salty dog, or she does. So they prospect me pretty regular. When you've been working for the state as long as I have, you work up a sweat just thinking about it, because politics is the art of the possible. Sometimes it's also the absurd, as you all know. But this place has produced some incredible people around in the vicinity. Folks come up here because, number one, they're different. Number two, their spirits are open. And this place recharges the souls of a lot of wonderful people. And particularly I think of Leonard Tate, who was born in a little cabin over here. He called it Holla Head, head of the holla. And his sister Clarabelle went to New Orleans and played at the Jung Hotel when, for 40 years, I guess. She played a piano in one hand, an organ in the other, and sang all those wonderful songs we love, and some of the ones we don't know as well. But she was a premier entertainer, and she used to come back and regale people at the crafts fair with her art. Her brother was a wonderful local artist. Her younger brother, Leon, or Leonard Tate, was a poet. And Leonard Tate said, "We're mountain people," they tell us, "coarse of feature and of speech, with morale as friable as the sandstone of our hills." But all my life, I've wanted to tell them that yes, we are mountain people, but beneath the sandstone of our hills, there's granite in our character. So this is the kind of countryside up here that's really unique and worthy, and all of you are on the same wavelength of that sort of thing, so we're going to have a nice day.